Good morning, dear students of class 12. Welcome to this online English class. And today we are going to further continue with part 3 of the text of the lesson from your Flamingo Lesson 3, Deep Water by William Douglas. We had discussed that this lesson is an extract from William Douglas' book of Men and Mountains. And here in this selection of the text, which is an autobiographical part of his life, it is used to share with us his phobia, his fear of water, and how he tried to overcome it. Till now, we had discussed how William Douglas had developed an aversion for water when he was just 3 or 4 years old in the beach in California when he had gone with his father for surfing. A wave knocked him down and swept over him. He cried as he was buried in water. He was terribly scared, but his father laughed because it was not such a serious incident. But then this had a mark on his life, and then when he was 11 or 10 years old, he decided to learn swimming. He got himself enrolled at the YMCA pool in Yakima, although his mother tried to warn him and she shared with him in detail each incident of drowning case, which is like all mother. But YMCA pool was safe. It was 2 or 3 feet at the shallow end and 9 feet at the other, and even the drop was gradual. It was not steep. In few days, 2 or 3 days, he had developed some sort of confidence. He could swim with a pair of water wings and by aping the other boys. One day he reached early and he was just waiting for other children to arrive so that he can start swimming. He was just sitting by the side of the pool when a big strong boy came and he tossed him into the water all of a sudden. But at this time also he tried to, he was frightened no doubt, but he was not frightened out of his wits. And he had a strategy in his mind that he would hit the bottom with force, and with the same force he would come out, and then he would come to the surface and he would paddle to the edge of the pool. But 3 attempts he made and they all failed, and finally when he regained consciousness, he had given up all hope of being saved. But when he regained consciousness, he found himself by the side of the pool, surrounded by other boys who had probably saved him. And they were reprimanding the boy who had tossed him into the pool, who was trying to clarify his stand by saying that he was just joking. He had not meant it seriously. But this was a nightmarish experience for him. We can call it a misadventure. And this had such an impact on him that it spoiled not only his, it was not a short-term effect, but it impacted his life, his normal life. He was not able to lead a normal life because of his fear of water. Indulge in any kind of water sports, going for fishing trips, canoeing, boating, swimming, etc. And one day he decided that he cannot live with this fear because it was affecting his normal life, his personality. And so he decided to learn swimming under an instructor with all safety precautions. One October, he decided to get an instructor to teach him how to learn swimming. And he went to the pool, practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. This was his schedule for learning swimming. Now the instructor taught him with all precautions swimming. First removed his fear of water by putting a belt around him, and a rope was attached to this belt, which was further attached to a pulley which ran on an overhead cable. The instructor held on to the end of the rope, and he was made to go back and forth across the pool. And this exercise was repeated hour after hour, day after day, week after week. Each time he went into the pool, a bit of panic seized him. But each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope, and the same old terror returned and his legs froze. It was 3 months before the tension began to slacken, means began to become less. So he had at least learned how to go back and forth in water, although with all necessary help, but he could bear the sight of water now. The second part of the training was he was taught inhaling and exhaling. He was made to raise his nose and inhale, and repeated exercise hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went under water. All this exercise, breathing exercise, moving back and forth in water, was given to him to take away his scare of water. The next part of his training was kicking his legs in water. For weeks I did that. At first my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed, and finally I could command them. So he was given training piece by piece in parts. Thus piece by piece he built a swimmer, and when he had perfected each piece he put them together into an integrated whole. Means now he was taught how to swim in water. In by combining all these training which was given to him in parts. And in April, the training started in October, and in April he said, now you can swim. Dive off and swim the length of the pool, crawl stroke. I did. The instructor was finished. Finished means the instructor's job was over. He had taught Douglas how to swim in water. But I was not finished. But Douglas was not satisfied. His training still remained, and that was self-practice. I still wondered if I would be terror-stricken when I was alone in the pool. I tried it. I swam the length up and down. Tiny vestiges of the old terror would return. Vestiges means tiny remains of the old terror would return. The vestiges, tiny vestiges, were those frightening moments when he was the misadventure that had happened to him when he experienced a near drowning experience. But now I could frown and say to that terror trying to scare me, well, here's to you, look, and off I'd go for another length of the pool. But somehow he tried to muster up strength and continue swimming. He would challenge the terror each time, though he would encounter those terrors which he had experienced earlier, which are referred as tiny vestiges of old terror. This went on until July. April to July, he kept practicing himself alone. But I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all terror had left him. In the middle, while he was swimming, the terror would come and bother him. And so he wanted this terror to completely, he wanted to overcome this terror completely. So I went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, stride stroke, and backstroke. Only once did the terror return. So when he was swimming in Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, the terror did return, but only once. When I was in the middle of lake, I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned in a miniature. Miniature means small form. The old sensation, that feeling of drowning. I laughed and said, "Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me?" It fled and I swam on. So he challenged the terror and it returned back. So he was able to overcome that terror. The terror did return and bother him. Yes, I had residual doubts. Residual means remaining residues of doubts that that terror would scare him. At my opportunity, at my first opportunity, I hurried west, went to Tieton, to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Mead Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of Warm Lake. So again, he tried to make another attempt of self-practicing swimming all alone and challenging the terror. The next morning, I stripped, dived into the lake, swam across to the shore and back, thus as Don Corpon used to do. I shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned echo. I had conquered my fear of water. So this time when he was swimming in the warm lake, not even a tiny vestige of fear bothered him. And he was overjoyed and he shouted his victory. The entire peak echoed with his sound of victory, that he had finally conquered his fear of water. The experience had a deep meaning for him. It was not just overcoming his fear of water. It had impacted his whole life, his personality, as only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can appreciate. He says that only those who have experienced terror in their life can only and conquered it can appreciate my feeling. In death there is peace. There is terror only in the fear of death, as Roosevelt knew when he said, "All we have to fear is fear itself." He remembered the saying of Roosevelt that one should fear only fear. It has a deep meaning in his life. There is terror only in the fear of death. Because I had experienced both the sensation of dying when he was experiencing the near drowning experience at the Vincennes pool, and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew in intensity. This desire to live had grown in many bounds in his life, and that is why, because he was suffering from the fear of water, he had taken all measures to overcome it. And then once he overcame that fear, life had a new meaning for him, had a new purpose for him. At last I felt released, free to walk the trails and climb the peaks and to brush aside fear. After conquering this fear of water, he was ready to walk all the trails, the difficulties of life, and climb the peaks means achieve success in life, and at the same time was in a position to challenge all sorts of fears. So the lesson has a message for all of us, that one should not live with any kind of fear. Everyone has some fear or the other, but we should try to find ways how to overcome that fear. Then life becomes purposeful for us. Life has a new meaning for us. I think we are going to stop here. You are going to read the text again and come prepared with your queries. Post them in your WhatsApp group or in your interactive online class. Thank you. Have a nice day. Take care.